Hello, 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 beautiful creatures of the internet. I'm Mango Jones. Hold on, let me adjust my mic settings because I don't know how my mic sounds. Ha! And I don't want to be too low. Let's do 120. 120 works. Okay, so hi guys. Before we get started, as usual, down in the description you will find a link to all of the members of the Stream Pervs who I'm on a shared StreamYard with, like Slim Living Cyborg, Dungeon Queen, Sir Little Wolf, who does a lot of stuff with like classic cartoons. He revisits classic cartoons. It's awesome. Y'all should check it out. There is a link to my big, huge list of resources like LGBTQIA plus resources, reproductive rights, things like that. You will find the LinkTree of Things. In the LinkTree is, my Twitch, because we're going to be starting that up soon with like PS1 games. It's going to be awesome. So there's a bunch that I've never played that I really want to, and well, now I can. You will also find a link to the Unchained Maidens inside of the LinkTree, and well, you can find me and Fit and Curvy there every other Saturday with Anna. So I'm officially, apparently, the adjunct petty professor in legal law for this trial. So if you complete this trial with me, you get all the way through it, then you will earn your petty university degree in white rich law. Because it's so much different than regular law, as we can tell by this trial. Now, before we start listening to Alex's testimony, Alex testifying, because Alex did take the stand yesterday and today, I did want to walk y'all through the Google Drive, because there is a link pinned at the top to the legal documents and such, and there is one in the description. So whenever you're watching people like go over different like highlights of the trial, you'll hear them talk about things like the boat crash, all of the lawsuits. Alex himself is going to talk about the lawsuits, the boat crash, his financial crimes, all of that. So when you go into the Google Drive, as you can see, you have lawsuits and civil cases, shooting incident, boat accident, state trial. All you have to do is click on one of those based on what you're looking for. You'll find these Google documents, and you will find folders. Each document pertains to a folder. When you open one of those documents, everything is in chronological order. Make your life easier. Everything is just in chronological order. Exactly what you have to do is click to be able to open the PDF. So you can find everything so much easier. It's a system that works for me, and I hope it works for y'all. Now, there we go. Now it'll load, of course. Because why wouldn't it take forever, right? Right. But yeah, see. So, moving along. I'm going to say hi to everyone. Then we're going to switch over to, well, trial stuff. Let's see. So, we got Fit, of course. I was messaging with Fit like all throughout trial yesterday because it's ridiculous. And you're going to see a very big change between how he speaks to his defense attorneys and how he speaks to the prosecution. And reading the body language, hearing the way that he speaks and everything, it's really telling as to what they prepped him for versus what he was not ready to be asked. What he's floundering on, if you will. Hey, Bill. Skits Crasher. Sydney. J. Troy. Yeah. Well, to be fair, with stuff like this, you have to scream into the void. Because, well, if you don't scream into the void, you're going to be highly upset. Like, really highly upset. Okay. Let me find where it starts because, well, they always take forever to get started. Alright. Let me get this started. Let me run and grab something, and I will be right back.
If he takes a stand. And
Too far.
Other crimes and or bad acts have determined them to be relevant, material, and admissible, having given the 403, 404 analysis, as well as the race geste analysis. And the trial has proceeded with many witnesses testifying regarding these issues, and the court will not change course during the trial and provide any special exception to Mr. Murdaugh with regard to testimony regarding the matters that the court has already determined to be admissible. With regard to the advice of counsel, Mr. Harpootlian, you stated for the record the basis for your advice. Of course, a defendant's, yes, sir.
Hey, Snort.
First of all the financial information, misdeeds, are in the record.
Hey, Graveyard
Basically,
Flowers.
the amounts, very specifically. So, at this juncture, two things happen. One, he has not been convicted of anything in regard to financial crimes. So normally they couldn't ask him about those crimes because he hadn't been. He hadn't been convicted.
Okay, so he has not been convicted of the financial crimes yet because they did not have a chance to go to trial before this trial started. It's really that simple. He's been indicted on them. In fact, you can find that inside the state trial stuff. You can find all of his indictments. And then some of the people that he mentions while he testifies from Palmetto State Bank are currently facing federal charges and are in federal court for the things that they did with him. And other financial crimes that they were committing. Like, it stands to reason that he wouldn't have gone to trial on stuff that they were still investigating and figuring out. Like, wouldn't you want to charge all the financial crimes at once? Just a thought there, Dick.
Got to be a crime that carries a year or more, those kinds of things. It meets none of that. So then you go to 608, and it's character evidence. And it's going to be fair game. We disagree with, there's a Fourth Circuit case that seems to restrict it a little bit, but we disagree with the process whereby he couldn't come in unless he was convicted. He takes the stand, and they're going to ask him extensively about each and every one of these events in an effort to commit character assassination. This is what we warned about. You told the jury it only goes to motive. And this obviously goes well beyond that and vitiates Your Honor's earlier ruling, or at least...
It does not go beyond motive. Well, okay, I guess it kind of does. Because it lends credence to a pattern of behavior, a pattern of willingness to lie to colleagues, to authorities, to people that are supposed to be above him. It shows how he can misuse his power to try and get out of things. Like, it shows that very specific pattern of being a douche. Let's put it that way. And yes, this whole thing is really wild. Like, beyond wild. Why does this have to happen in my state? Like, what? Come on now.
It gives them two grounds now to argue why it's relevant. And our advice was, had that information not already come out,
Exactly, bipolar
we would
noir.
be sitting here with no financial
A willingness to be greedy.
And we believe that the jury, high likelihood of the jury acquitting him because they haven't proved motive. They haven't proved, there's no forensic evidence whatsoever, no confession, no eyewitness. It's all, as you say, in denying our motion for a directed verdict, it's circumstantial.
Yes, it is very much a circumstantial case. However, there is enough probable cause and enough evidence for them to be able to put him on trial. You should know this, Dick. You're a criminal defense lawyer. You are a career criminal defense lawyer at that. Don't try and confuse people.
This is just a naked effort of character assassination to influence the jury, that he has committed these financial misdeeds or misrepresented other things. And as a result, no matter what charge you give the jury, we're fearful that if he hasn't explained any of that, they will hold it against him. And again, it all goes back to your original ruling to motive. I'm not sure they're arguing motive after Mr. Tindley's testimony and after Josh Cook's testimony.
Hold on, you guys. I'll talk to you guys about this while I find a better because no offense WLTX, but like, your shit ain't buffering, dude. Get it together. But we do actually, they have it on YouTube. You can find where they talked about whether or not this should be included. They have argued this inside of the courtroom without the jury present. The judge decided at the start, about a week into the trial, that it could be talked about in front of the jury. The jury could, in fact, know about all of these crimes because the judge agrees that it falls within South Carolina Rules of Evidence, Rule 404B. Like, that is a thing. Also, Rule 404B does pretty much line up with the federal Rule 404B. Like, it's the framework for it. The federal being the framework for the state, that is. But yeah. Like, this makes no sense to me why he would try and argue this. It's not a point to be argued. Let's try this stream, shall we? And yes, he did have all the motive. He has all of the motive. With the millions upon millions that he was stealing to support his lifestyle, and the fact that he was an alleged drug dealer and hired someone to kill him. Yeah.
Been convicted of anything in regard to financial crimes. So normally they couldn't ask him about those crimes because he hadn't been subject. He hadn't been convicted. He got to be a crime that carries a year or more. Those kinds of things. It meets none of that. So then you go under 608, and it's character evidence, and it's going to be. We disagree with. There's a Fourth Circuit case that seems to restrict it a little bit, but we disagree with the process whereby he couldn't come in unless he was convicted. He takes the stand, and they're going to ask him extensively about each and every one of these events in an effort to commit character assassination. This is what we warned about. You told the jury it only goes to motive. And this obviously goes well beyond that and vitiates Your Honor's earlier ruling, or at least it gives them two grounds now to argue why it's relevant. And our advice was, had that information not already come out, we would be sitting here with no financial misdeeds in the record. And we believe that the jury...
Oh, I hope everything's okay with the kitty cat, Sunshine.
Him
poor kitty.
Because they haven't proved motive. They haven't proved, there's no forensic evidence whatsoever, no confession, no eyewitness. It's all, as you say, in denying our motion for a directed verdict, it's circumstantial. This is just a naked effort of character assassination to influence the jury, that he has committed these financial misdeeds.
Please keep in mind that he assassinated his own character by committing the financial crimes in the first place. He did that. That was his thing. Hey, Sir Little Wolf.
Or misrepresented other things. And as a result, no matter what charge you give the jury, we're fearful that if he hasn't explained any of that, they will hold it against him. And again, it all goes back to your original ruling as to motive. I'm not sure they're even arguing motive after Mr. Tindley's testimony and after Dawes Cook's testimony, both of whom said there wasn't a storm coming on Thursday, the 10th. So again, our advice would have been different had Your Honor not allowed. I mean, if you would.
We know that the storm wouldn't have happened on the 10th because it would have just been his lawyer handing over the financial records if he was able to obtain them from Alex Murdaugh. And you can find that piece of paperwork inside of the Google Drive where the judge ordered that should he get that information, he would need to hand it over, and if not, they would schedule a hearing on it. It was an order. Their arguments are weak when there's actual paperwork.
Strike all that testimony and tell them to disregard it, we, in all likelihood, would not put him on advising to take the stand. I just want to make that
You
recognition.
just restated what you've previously put on the record and which you have argued throughout the trial.
Okay, I think maybe it's actually Court TV's feed. Oh, so fun fact. In the state of South Carolina, if you want to be able to record inside of a public hearing, you have to submit a request. And the judge can decide whether or not they will accept that request. In this case, they decided that Court TV could provide all of the live feeds for any media outlet that wants to be able to air it. So Court TV has a whole bunch of cameras in there, and people get to go to them and be like, hey, I want that feed. That's why you get so many different angles.
It's compound if he takes a stand. And we think, with all due respect, and I'm not arguing again what we argued a month ago, that what's going to happen is we're going to spend the next day or two or three with the state going through the minute details of each one of these offenses. We've already, in my opinion, this is a Bernie Madoff trial. This isn't a murder trial. This is all about financial misdeeds, not about.
No, that sounds like a good jury argument if you're the one to make the argument.
I'm not convincing you.
Pooh is Harpooten. He is the defense lawyer, the main defense lawyer.
I do not know what the questions that the state intends to ask. I cannot forecast the next 3 days, as you have just done, as to every minute detail the state will seek to introduce. And all rights are preserved as to any and all testimony and anything that is objectionable that you all wish to object to it. The court will rule when those objections are made.
Your Honor, I appreciate that. All we're saying is, if they have carte blanche to go into the minute details and talk about who the victims were and do all of that and do that, it's going to take a week more, especially with our objections, and then have to redirect them on that. And haven't we wasted enough time?
It's not a waste of time. You see, the state has already called their witnesses. They've rested. This is your witness. You are the one that wants to call him to the stand, which is why you are trying to decide whether or not the judge's initial ruling is valid. And that's not right. It's okay if it takes a week more. This is absolutely important. But I digress.
I'm on financial matters.
All right. I'll give you an opportunity to respond if you desire.
Your Honor, again, the court has ruled. I don't think I need to address it any further.
Yeah, when a defendant takes the stand and testifies, he has no right to set forth to the jury all facts which may be favorable without exposing himself to cross-examination. Whether or not a defendant testify is solely the right of that defendant. The court makes no recommendations pro or con. I have no role other than advising the defendant of his rights and to ensure that he understands his rights so that he will make an informed decision with regard to testifying after consultation with counsel and anyone else he might want to testify, consult with. Do you wish me to engage in that colloquy at this time with Mr. Murdaugh?
Your Honor, I think it would be good for you to engage in that colloquy now. We have one short witness before he would testify, if he continues to want to testify.
All right. Mr. Murdaugh, if you would come forward and stand in front of me and...
Now, I am going to skip that short witness because the most important part of day 23 was everything that came out of Alex Murdaugh's mouth.
Madam Clerk, if you will swear him.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give today will be the truth and the truth and nothing but the truth?
Hey, Alibis.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Good morning. At this time, I'm going to explain to you certain of your rights. If you do not understand anything I say, please let me know, and I will explain it in greater detail. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Now, we have now reached the stage of the trial in which you are presenting your defense, and you have the right to claim the protections given to you by the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. This amendment states in part that no person shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself. And this means that you cannot be required to testify. You do, however, have the right to testify on your own behalf. However, no one can make you testify. Whether or not you testify is a personal right.
Oh, yeah. I'm not going to skip him explaining this because this is something that is important to know for any cases that we cover in the future. This is what your constitutional rights are in the courtroom. And yeah, it's just important information. Stuff you need to know, just in case.
And no one can waive this right except you. If you decide to testify, you'll be subject to the same rules that govern other witnesses, and you may be examined and cross-examined on any relevant issue in this case. If you decide to testify, the decision on your part must be freely, voluntarily, and intelligently made with knowledge of the protections given to you by the Fifth Amendment and the consequences of your decision to testify. As I understand it, you have no convictions involving dishonesty or false statements or for any crimes punishable by more than 1 year imprisonment. But as it relates to any other relevant issue as determined by the court, you may be examined or cross-examined on any relevant issue. Do you understand?
I do, yes, sir.
If you decide not to testify, I will instruct the jurors that they cannot give the fact that you did not testify any consideration whatsoever, and that there is to be absolutely no prejudice to you because you did not testify. It is left entirely up to you whether or not you testify. You may talk with your attorneys, Mr. Harpootlian, Mr. Griffin, Mr. Barber, Ms. Fox, family, friends, or anyone else, but the final decision will be left entirely up to you. Do you understand what I've explained?
Yes, sir, I do.
Do you have any questions whatsoever as to what I've explained?
No, sir, thank you.
Yes, sir. And you've talked with your lawyers about whether or not you've testified. Mr. Harpootlian just suggested advice he's given to you. The court has no comment whatsoever as to whether you should or should not testify. But do you wish to confer with lawyers some more about whether or not you should testify?
No, sir, I don't need to talk to them anymore.
Have you made a decision as to whether you're going to testify?
Yes, sir,
All right, and what is your decision?
I am going to testify. I want to testify.
All right, very well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, so, yeah, that's something that I've always taken issue with too. It's just, ugh. No, you did not miss any Capri Sun information there, Lizard. Currently, there are still no Capri Suns. The housekeeper did not get them. Murdaugh did not have them. His favorites are Orange and Pacific Cooler. Or Mountain Cooler. One of the two. It's a cooler. R.I.P. Capri Suns. Okay, so, yeah. Murdaugh very much is well aware of his rights as he is a lawyer. He was a solicitor. He has all of that going for him. But let's get into the meat of it. Oh, by the way, Security Monitor Lizard has homemade pickles for sale. They're really good. So if you guys want some, you should hit him up at postalaguana@gmail.com. Yeah. Yeah. It's honestly the same for me. Like, anytime I do stuff like this, when I'm going over the legal paperwork, I have to sit down and, like, figure out exactly what they're trying to say. Don't get me wrong, I have fun doing it, but... Ugh. Also, another small shill. Tomorrow morning I will be on Security Monitor Lizard's channel for brunch. So, I'll put that link in the chat.
Watch your step. Yes, ma'am. You'll place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. You'll have a seat on the witness stand. Adjust that microphone. And if you don't mind stating your full name again and spelling your last name.
I'm Alec Murdaugh, Murdaugh. Good morning.
Guys, okay, when you go by a nickname, you're not supposed to give your nickname as your name when you're on the stand. His name is Richard. He's Richard. He should have said Richard. Just saying. Like, don't do that.
Mr. Murdaugh, on June 7th, 2021, did you take this gun or any gun like it and shoot your son Paul in the chest in the feed room at your property off Moselle Road?
No, I did not.
Mr. Murdaugh, did you take this gun or any gun like it and blow your son's brains out on June 7th or any day or any time?
No, I did not.
Mr. Murdaugh, did you take a 300 blackout, such as this, and fire it into your wife Maggie's leg, torso, or any part of her body?
No, I did not.
Did you shoot a 300 blackout into her head, causing her death?
Mr. Griffin, I didn't shoot my wife or my son anytime. Ever.
Oh yeah, he's the most dramatic for no reason. Like, why? Ugh.
Mr. Murdaugh, is that you on the kennel video at 8:44 p.m. on June 7th, the night Maggie and Paul were murdered?
It is.
Were you in fact at the kennels at 8:44 p.m. on the night Maggie and Paul were murdered?
I was.
Did you lie to Sled Agent Owen and Deputy Laura Rutland on the night of June 7th and told them that you stayed at the house after dinner?
I did lie to them.
Did you lie to Agent Owen and Agent Croft on the follow-up interview on June 10th that the last time you saw Maggie and Paul was at dinner?
I did lie to them.
And in the interview of August 11th, did you tell Agent Owen and Agent Croft, did you lie to them by telling them that you were not down at the kennels on that night?
Yes.
Okay, so Sir Little Wolf, we know for a fact that he is currently not lying because in the SLED reports, they do have where he told them, and his interviews, the body cam footage, all of that, you hear him tell them that he was not there. And then it came out at the start of the trial that there was a Snapchat video that was taken by Paul before his death. And we also know from Shelley, his mom's caretaker, that he showed up at the house about 9:10, 9:15-ish, and stayed there for about 15 minutes and then went back home. So, Snapchat video, 8:44. Estimated time of death, 9 p.m., 9:10-ish, 9:15, he's at his mom's. And then told her to lie and say that he was there for like 30, 40 minutes.
Alec, why did you lie to Agent Owen, Agent Croft, and Deputy Rutland about the last time you saw Maggie and Paul?
As my addiction evolved over time, I would get in these situations or circumstances where I would get paranoid thinking. It could be anything that triggered it. It might be a look somebody gave me. It might be a reaction somebody had to something I did. It might be a policeman following me in a car. That night, June 7th, after finding Mags and Paul, don't talk to anybody without Danny with you. All my partners were just repeatedly telling me that. I had a deputy sheriff taking gunshot test from my hands. I'm sitting in a police car with David Owen asking me about my relationship with my wife and my son. And all those things coupled together after finding them, coupled with my distrust for SLED, caused me to have paranoid thoughts. Normally, when these paranoid thoughts would hit me, I could take a deep breath real quick and just think about it, reason my way through it, and just get past it really quickly. On June the 7th, I wasn't thinking clearly.
I would just like to take a moment to remind y'all that June the 7th, when he spoke to the agents, the first responders, the officers that came to the Moselle property, the first thing out of his mouth was that it had to do something with the boat crash. They had been getting death threats, this, that, and the other. That was the very first thing he told them. After Curtis, the guy that he hired to shoot him in the head, failed a polygraph test, which, by the way, it's questionable as to whether those should be admissible in court. I'll do a stream about it. But after he failed that, his lawyer put out a statement that was like, it was Curtis. Curtis did it. Had to be Curtis. Which is it? Who did it? We have heard the tape. We know what you said. There's news reports all about the secondary story. There's the alibi defense paperwork inside of the Google Drive. I think that getting on the stand was probably the worst thing that he could do for his case. I've seen a lot of people question that, but in my honest opinion, he should not have gotten on the stand.
I don't think I was capable of reason. And I lied about being down there. And I'm so sorry that I did. I'm sorry to my son Buster. I'm sorry to Grandma and Papa T. I'm sorry to both of our families. Most of all, I'm sorry to Mags and Pawpaw. I would never intentionally do anything to hurt either one of them. Ever. Ever.
Did you continue lying after that night? Did you not?
But once I lied, I continued to lie. Yes, sir.
Why?
You know, oh, what a tangled web we weave. But once I told a lie, Then I told my family, I had to keep lying.
Yes, he does sound like he's giving a statement after sentencing. And it's pretty much a strategy. It is to garner the sympathy from the jury. But there is no questioning of the shit that's already come out of his mouth. So, it's an attempt.
Alex, tell the jury what happened on the evening of June 7th, starting when you met with Paul.
I'd been at work that day.
No, bipolar noir, they're not. So, obviously, he has had this conversation with his lawyers as to whether or not he should get on the stand in his own defense. So, his lawyers already know exactly what they're going to ask him, and he already knows what story he's going to tell. So, they're just going to let him go on.
A fairly normal day. You mean start in the morning, or?
Sure, start in the morning.
It was just a regular morning. Maggie was leaving.
Yes, it is a lot of unnecessary detail. And so there can be the argument made for people with anxiety disorders, people with ADHD, people with other various mental health issues that, you know, adding the extra detail is just something that in your brain feels necessary to do. Like, it's how you understand it. So other people should be able to understand it with all the extra stuff, you know? But when you're on a stand like this, when you're testifying, you shouldn't give this much unnecessary detail because it makes it look like you're lying. He did not have to bring up the fact that he's, you know, addicted to opiates. He did not have to bring up a lot of the things he's brought up. But it's up to his lawyers whether or not they want to cut him off, so
To go out of town. She was going to a doctor's appointment, and she had some stuff to do at Edista, where she was having some work done on our house at Edista. But Maggie was there that morning. She went to leave, and she told me she was doing these things. I always ask Maggie to come back home and stay with me. But anyway, Maggie had left. She did her thing. I went to work, did work. I learned from Paul that.
Who's Paul?
That's Paul, my son Paul, Murdaugh.
And your name?
notice how when he's talking about his day, he said he went to work, he did work stuff. He did not mention the fact that his partners at his law firm, PMPED, confronted him about stolen money. The first day that they confronted him was June 7th.
Name for him was Paul.
Yeah, we called him Paul.
Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
And, Buster, Maggie, I called him Paul or Paul Terry. but Mags called him Pawpaw, Bus called him Pawpaw. A lot of people called him Pawpaw.
Sorry, I have to judge this for a tiny second. Calling him Pawpaw makes him sound like a grandpa. Just, that bugs me. I don't know why. Pawpaw. Absolutely right there, Bipolar Noir. He's a gift of gab person. Kind of adds to the sleeve factor given the circumstances.
But anyway, I learned about I had known that CB, the guy that worked for us, had sprayed the sunflowers. I knew about that, but I'd been out of town. I didn't know they were dead. Paul let me know they had died. So we had to replant the Dove field. That's how the Dove field, which the Dove field is just a big social part of
Skeeve,
having
sleeve,
property
he's both.
come, and it's just a social big part of it. So the Dove field was a big deal. So when the sunflowers got killed, we knew they were dead. Paul was coming home, and I learned that early Monday morning.
And and we'll catch back up, but at some point in time, did you meet up with Paul?
Yeah, after work.
Yeah, the Paul thing is a weak ploy. Like, I can understand his mom and his brother doing it, because, like, I mean, they call Buster Buster. His name is Randolph. But to me, and based off of everything that we know from the boat crash, the way that he handled it, the way that he has handled all of these issues having to do with his son, it feels like he does not see his son as an adult, even though his son was an adult.
I met Paul at the property.
And we're gonna backfill and talk about more of the day, but I just want to focus in on that evening right now.
Okay.
When Paul gets to the property, what do y'all do?
First thing we do is we go to the Dove field, and we look at the Dove field, and
How'd you get to the Dove field?
he had come in my brother's truck. We got in my son Buster's black pickup truck. We called it Buster's truck, or the black pickup
Yes,
truck.
that's the word. Thank you.
But I call it
Infantilizing.
Buster's truck.
It's infantilizing.
Okay, so you're in Buster's truck and you go to the Dove field. Tell the jury what else.
Well, that's the first thing we do. We go to the Dove field and we look, and it was clearly, it didn't, you could tell they were, you could tell they'd been sprayed, and you could tell they were dead. They might have still had a tiny bit of life, but they were dead. So we knew that. So we knew we had to replant the whole field. So that didn't take but a second. But after that, Paul,
So, not a law. I'm not a lawyer. I am not a body language expert. But it does feel like he is purposely working himself up so that he can cry about this. Also, he gets really red.
we just rode the property. We spent time together. We rode around and we spent time together on the property.
Did you go to the duck pond?
Oh yeah, we went to several food plots.
Exactly, Drunken Crow. Except
Single Oak
it helps if
Stand,
they're
we call
actual
it, which is
tears,
across the
which
road.
they're not. Just
And
sniffles.
we went to the bridge stand. We went to the duck pond where we stayed for a minute, and
Did you,
I can remember the duck pond specifically because I had helped Paul plant the Dove field and the corn in the Dove field. So sunflowers, corn, And I had helped him plant the corn in the duck field. Paw had planted the duck pond by himself, and he's making a really big deal to me about how much better the corn was doing in the duck pond than it was in the duck field. We stayed there for a little while. We were at the cabin for a little while. We rode around the cabin looking at it.
Now, cabin is what?
That's, it's just a little small, it's truly a cabin. It's a 4-room structure. It's got a little living area, a little kitchen, and it's got 2 little bedrooms and 1 little bathroom. And that's what you've heard talk about, where the kids stayed some summers. And
Is that what the jury's seen, some overhead pictures? It's right there on Moselle Road?
yeah, it's right up on Moselle Road, and it's very close to the driveway that goes to the shop and the kennels.
Did you spend any time at the shop, you think?
Oh, yes. I mean,
Yes. Yeah. That's why I said something about it before, the ADHD thought train, because I get that type of train of thought, but if I'm trying to factually tell someone where I was and what I was doing on a specific day, I'm not going to include the extra details because it lends nothing to what they actually need to know. So, someone that's not crying wipes tears that far.
the shop was, I mean, that was sort of the hub. That was the main place. If you weren't at the house, you might be out going to this field or this food plot or this duck pond or this part of the river, but the shop is where the kennels were located. You know, that was, you were always there. Something was always going on there. You're always doing something there. That's where all the tools were. That's where all the equipment was kept. I mean, that was the main hub.
Right.
And so we were there that day. I mean, there was a point in time where we unloaded a bulldozer that had been on a different part of the property. It was on a trailer. We unloaded it and sprayed it down real quick. That was just one of the many things we did that day.
One of the things the jury's seen, Alec, is a Snapchat video of you and doing something with a tree. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And so what was happening there?
That's just part of when we were riding. That particular location where that was is at a food plot that we called Sawtooth Oaks, and it was named that because there were some sawtooth oaks that were planted there that you can't.
Oh, yeah. Something about rich white southern families is that they name everything. Like, literally, they name everything. The property they were at was called Moselle. I have stayed at beach houses that are owned by rich white families, and one that I stayed at was called Wacky Jackie. Like, so you're gonna hear a lot of weird names for shit.
Can't see in the picture, but what that tree is, at all these food plots, there's an area where it's not as big as a field, but it's like a field where you plant.
Yes, they did name them
vegetation for wildlife. Like it might be cowpeas or soybeans, but you plant, and then there's a feeder to attract deer. Then we planted these little fruit trees on these stands, and what you see me doing is fooling with a fruit tree that I'd been tending to. It had fallen over. I had straps on it. I had strings on it that were holding it up. One of the strings popped. I undid the other string, and it was falling over, and Papa was laughing at me, trying to back up. It was just a fruit tree that I'd been dealing with for.
Yes, Sunshine, the spicy brain, the stuff that, you know, you gotta take your meds for and stuff, or go to therapy. Yeah, spicy brain. Hey, Jakai. Jakai, am I pronouncing that right? Is it Jakai? Jakai? I don't want to get it wrong. But yeah, honestly, it does kind of feel like the reason that his lawyers are letting him continue to go on is because all of this information is going to just, it's going to make the jury lost. Like, if you're sitting there in the courtroom listening to him and he's just babbling on and on and on. You have so many details that are just being thrown at you. You're going to get confused. You're going to lose the plot.
Really for years,
And
and it wouldn't stand up straight.
and were you and Paul having a good time at that point?
You could not be around Paul. You could not be around him and not have a good time.
Tell that to the young lady that he slapped and punched before he crashed the boat, allegedly. I mean, you can't because she is unfortunately passed away. But no, not everyone had a good time around Paul, including his ex-girlfriend, who is suing you.
Were you close to Paul?
You couldn't be any closer than Paul and I and Buster and I were and are. He's just wonderful. Wonderful.
And it's one of the things you enjoyed doing together was just riding the property?
I love doing anything with Paul. It was an absolute delight. But yeah, one of the things, Paul's passion. Paul was passionate about a lot of things, but that property was really a passion of his. He loved to work it. He loved to work with fields. He loved to work with food plots. He loved to hunt. He'd work on the roads. He would work on all of it. He would work on the structure. He worked on the whole property. It was his passion.
So painting Paul in this good light is a strategy move because they know that the prosecution is going to bring up the boat crash. They know that they're going to bring up the charges that Paul was waiting trial for when he was murdered.
So on the evening of the 7th, that jury's been inundated with data from various different sources, but
Sure.
just ballpark, can you, knowing, what we know now after reviewing everything, but roughly when do you remember Paul getting there and you getting there and starting to ride the property?
Now that I've had the benefit of seeing all of these records, Paul got home, I believe, a little bit before 7 o'clock. And I got home a little bit before him. I think the details had been that I got home around 6:42 or 6:45 or something like that, and Paul got there, very quickly thereafter.
It looks like he is chewing on his tongue reaper, and I think, and this is just my opinion, again, not an expert in anything, in my opinion, it appears as though it's a self-soothing tactic because he can't do the same things that he was doing behind the table, sitting by his lawyers on the stand. The cameras are on him at all times when he is on that stand. So he can't rock back and forth. He can't do a whole bunch of swiveling around. He can't move the way that would normally be required. So yeah, that's my opinion.
And then,
By 7 o'clock.
so you rode the property for a while. Do you remember when Maggie arrived?
Yeah, it was later than that. It was 8 or after 8. I think it was after 8 and looking at the records. A little bit after 8.
And do you remember her arriving or where you were when she arrived?
I believe that I was at the shop when she came through, which would not be unusual for her, having been away. If Blanca had gotten the mail or somebody had gotten the mail, maybe not, but if somebody had not gotten the mail, it would be perfectly normal for her to pull through there. And I believe she did pull through there that day.
Please keep in mind that earlier in the trial, we did hear from multiple sources that Maggie preferred to be at Edisto, at their property there, and she had in fact been in Edisto, and she had doctor's appointments and everything like that going on that day. But he really wanted her to go to Moselle for some reason, and Paul lived in Columbia. Columbia is, with traffic, about an hour and a half or so away. And he wanted Paul there. But he didn't ask Buster to come over.
And Paul and I were at the shop, I believe.
And then what did you do after Maggie arrived?
Maggie went to the house, and I know that. But shortly after, however I learned that Maggie got home, I went to the house when Maggie got home, and I left Paul at the shop.
So, and what'd you do when you got to the house?
I saw Mags, talked to Mags, and I took a shower.
The clothes that we saw in that Snapchat video was, is that the clothes you had at work that day?
Yes, those are the clothes I had on at work that day.
And the jury's seen you in those clothes and what's, on June 7th, how tall were you and how much did you weigh?
On June 7th, well, I'm a hair over 6'4", right at 6'4". On June the 7th, I was about 265 pounds, 264, 265.
Yeah, ever since he got arrested and has just been in jail, he's lost a lot of weight. Like, he has lost a ton of weight.
And this was in June, June 7th.
Yes, sir.
When you were outside, riding around and doing, did you get hot and sweaty?
Absolutely. I mean, Paul and I had done some things. We unloaded the bulldozer, cleaned the bulldozer, we'd fooled around. Yeah, I mean, I sweated. I was heavy, and taking prescription pills also makes you sweat worse, or at least taking oxycodone makes you sweat more than you normally do.
So was it unusual for you to take a shower when you got back to the house?
Not at all.
Now, this is what his defense is for not being in the same clothes that were in the Snapchat video when the police arrived and everything, and when he went to his mother's house. This is also, I'm thinking, his defense for allegedly not remembering what he was wearing at all, because Sled had asked him for those clothes, and he was having trouble remembering what he was wearing.
And after you took a shower, what did you change into?
I changed into the clothes that you've seen in this trial.
Okay, that's actually a really good question. From what I understand, they have not publicly said if there's any lasting neuro issues. However, when he was being held in Columbia, he did have hearings in order to determine whether or not he could get bail, and if they could adjust his bail and let him go out. The judge ordered a psych eval. Mind you, this was after the murder charges. The judge ordered a psych eval and wanted to look over it, and determined after the psych eval that he was fit to stand trial and he could not be let out. His bail was to stay at $7 million. That is what we know.
shorts and the shirt.
Okay. When you got out of the shower, and changed clothes, what'd you do next?
I went back out where Mags and Pawpaw were, and,
And what were
for
they
dinner.
doing? What's going on?
Mags had, as you've heard, Blanca had prepared dinner, but it had been cooked earlier. Mags had fixed, I know Mags had fixed mine and her plate, because I didn't fix a plate. She may have fixed Pawpaw. Pawpaw was eating, and Pawpaw was almost done eating by the time I got back out, which also wasn't unusual. I mean, Pawpaw was always on the go. I mean, he never sat still. And, you know, he'd sit down to eat, but then he's going on to his next item.
And,
So then Maggie and I ate.
and do you all eat at the table? Do you eat at the den? What's your normal?
Why does it matter where they ate? They ate dinner. Again, this just leads into the theory that I have of them trying to confuse the jury with all of this unnecessary information. It doesn't matter where they ate.
Habit.
We would do both, but, I mean, when we ate at the table, it was really sort of more formal or not formal, but just more of an organized thing. Our normal, what we would normally do on a regular evening is we would eat in the den in front of the TV. And that's where we ate that day. I ate on the couch, the table. Maggie had a little, a TV tray that she kept over there, and Pawpaw would usually sit in a recliner and eat off of the ottoman.
Was the TV on?
Yes,
Was that normal for the TV to be on?
yes. TV, if we were in the house, TV was on.
So what happened next, Alec?
Pawpaw moved on doing whatever he was doing. I don't know if he was in the gun room doing something, or he was in his room doing something, or he was outside doing something. I actually thought he'd gone to the shed, but in looking at, to the shop, but in looking at the benefit of having these records that we have, I know he was still at the house, or somewhere around the house, doing something, but he wasn't in there with Maggie and I.
It would have been very easy for him to say, I'm not sure what Paul was doing, but he was not in the room with us. See how easy that is? That's what you should do on the stand.
But Maggie wanted to go to the kennels, and I had eaten dinner. I laid back on the couch where I was sitting. Maggie wanted to go to the kennels, and she asked me to go, and I didn't go at that time. I didn't want to go.
Why didn't you want to go?
It was hot. I just had a shower. I knew I'd end up doing more work, sweating more.
So, he mentions the clothes that he was wearing in the initial Snapchat video with the tree. What he did not say was that the clothes that he wore to work that day were the same clothes that he was wearing inside of the Snapchat video that was taken in the kennels. Yeah. And yes, he does need a fidget toy. He keeps chewing on his tongue and you can, like, see and hear it sometimes, and it's mouth sounds.
And the dogs is always a chaotic scene, and I just didn't want to go right then.
Well, let me ask you, what had you done the previous days, like Friday and Saturday and Sunday?
Again, unnecessary information. The previous days really don't have anything to do with the events that occurred on the 7th.
Start with Friday, or
Yeah.
go backwards?
Yeah, start with Friday.
All right, on that,
Just briefly.
so 7th, 6th, 5th, 4th. So June the 4th, my dad was in the hospital in Savannah, Georgia, at Memorial Hospital. And I went down to visit him Friday afternoon, and I stayed with him in the hospital. I spent the night there. You know, he was real sick. I mean, he was having a hard time.
Did you get much sleep Friday night?
No, I mean, I had a real sweet nurse found me. At first, there was just a hard chair in there like this, but a nurse found me a soft chair, sort of like a recliner. So, I mean, I'm sure I slept, but I didn't sleep. You know, I didn't get a night's sleep. No, sir.
And then Saturday and Sunday?
Saturday, we had plans with.
That's all right, Reaper. If you fall asleep, you fall asleep. Because you do need sleep. Sleep is important.
With Buster in Brooklyn. Y'all have heard about Brooklyn. It's Buster's wonderful little girlfriend. And Mags and I had plans with them to meet them in Columbia, to go to the South Carolina, it was a regional baseball tournament. And South Carolina was playing Virginia, I believe. So when I got back from Savannah and met up with Mags, at some point we headed to Columbia. So, I mean, there wasn't a lot going on in between there. We headed up to Columbia and met Bus in Brooklyn.
And then, did you stay in Columbia Saturday night?
We did. We went to the ball game, and I remember it was an evening game. We went pretty early and tailgated. Maggie had reconnected with a college friend who coincidentally had married a college friend of mine. And they had a son that played for Carolina. He was a first baseman.
And the answer to your question, Sir Little Wolf, is it doesn't. It doesn't. So on top of confusing jury with a whole bunch of extra unnecessary information, this just feels like he is trying to paint everyone's relationship in this wonderful light. Make them seem, like a typical family and stuff like that. But yes, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of what happened.
A really good little player. And we met them and tailgated with them, and it was a lot of fun. They had a lot of the parents of the players that were playing for Carolina, and it was a fun time. We tailgated, and then we went to, it was a night game, so we went to the game, and the game got over. It was fairly late into the evening, and after that, Bus, Brooklyn, and Mags and I believe we went to the restaurant in the hotel where we were staying, but we went and had dinner, and then Bus and Brooklyn went home, and of course Maggie and I went to our room.
And then get up the next day, and is there another game?
Another game the next day. That's right. And
then after that, you head back to Moselle with Maggie?
yeah, we went to the game. That's right. Mags and I go back to
Moselle.
Moselle.
And the jury's heard about, I think, Ms. Rass talking about you bringing Krispy Kreme donuts to your dad.
Maggie loved her. She always taking him something. My dad loved sweets, and she and I picked up donuts and took Krispy Kreme donuts to him.
Okay, so if you're ever on trial like this, and they ask you about things you did in the previous day, and we'll use what they all did. Friday, I went and I saw my father in the hospital and spent the night. Saturday, my wife and I went to a baseball game and spent the night in Columbia. Sunday, my wife took donuts to my dad. Or I took donuts to my dad. See? That's what you do. That's it. Bipolar. Allegedly killed her. Just gotta cover my bases.
And then, y'all both spent the night together at Moselle on Sunday night. Did you both spend the night at Moselle on Sunday night?
Yes,
And then the 7th was a work day?
that's right. It was a Monday, June the 7th.
Hang on. I'll rephrase it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Was Monday, the 7th, a work day for you?
Yes,
Okay. And I just wanted to give that background, and so moving forward to when you testified previously about Maggie asking you to go to the kennels.
Little Wolf, we don't have to worry about in Minecraft when covering court cases. We just have to make sure that we preface the thing that they're on trial for with allegedly. He allegedly muck-ducked his wife and his son.
Were you tired?
oh yes, I was tired,
And you had just had a shower?
just had a shower.
And you said that, well, did you go with Maggie to the kennels
No.
immediately?
No, I did not.
What'd you do? What, did she leave?
Yes, she did. She left and Paw Paw was gone.
Do you know how she got to the kennels?
At the time, I didn't, but now, looking at these condensed records,
Yes, the views of my chat are not necessarily the views of myself. I'll straight up tell you my views. But yeah. All of this is great, Vera, you got this. It is diarrhea of the mouth. I would say word salad, but no, it's just information diarrhea.
and understanding the timeline, it's clear to me that she rode with Paw Paw.
And did you stay in the house?
Yes,
For how long?
not long. I laid back on the couch, put my feet up, and like many times when Maggie asked me to do something that I didn't want to do or didn't start out doing, I changed my mind and decided I'm gonna ride up there. And I did.
And how did you get to the kennels?
I went on a golf cart.
Was the golf cart at the house, the main house?
Yeah, it was, and it was there most of the time.
Yes, the prosecution absolutely could object to the relevance of this line of questioning. But this line of questioning, the things that he just spews out of his mouth, the things that are contradictory to all of the stuff that they have filed before, all of the stuff that was said to the police, all of the stuff that they have in evidence, the prosecution can use all of this bullshit to their advantage, especially since his testifying was cut between February 23rd and today. Because, well, he could forget details that he spewed. Prosecution's doing good by not stopping him, honestly.
And when you got down to the kennels, what was happening?
It's just what I thought it was. It was a little bit of chaos. I mean, it was clear to me that Mags had just let the dogs out. The two dogs that were out were really her pet dogs. One is Grady. You've heard about a black lab. That's Grady. That's Buster's dog. And the other is the yellow lab that you've heard about. That's Bubba. Bubba was mine and Maggie's dog, but it was really mine, Maggie's, Bus, and Paw Paw's dog. It was a family dog. But Bubba's a dog I hunted. I mean, Maggie loved Bubba. She loved Grady too, but I mean, she had a special place for Bubba. But anyway, when the dogs first were let out, the first thing they would do is they would run. If you look at the overhead picture that you've seen, there were planted pines right behind the kennels. So you got the kennels and the chicken coop sort of form an L shape. And
Exactly right, Fit. He was warned. And as a lawyer, a career lawyer like himself, he already knew what his rights were. He knows how this works. Sucks to suck, I guess. I don't know. I'm betting Bubba did like Capri Sun. Bubba's a good boy.
in that L was some planted pines. First thing the dogs would do is go out in that kennel, and Bubba and Grady, I think, learned this from Bubba, but Grady would do it too. But Bubba had to mark every tree. I mean, he would go and he'd do a little number on this tree and that tree. You know how dogs do, and just marking his territory.
Okay, Mary, you did miss the Capri Sun thing. So the housekeeper, the head housekeeper, she was actually questioned about, what she did. And she was sent to go get Capri Sun. She was told which ones to get because of the ones that Alex and them like. And they went so far as to ask her if she actually got the Capri Suns. I mean, it was a lighthearted moment, but still. What did the Capri Suns, God damn.
And so that was the first thing those dogs did when they came out. When I got there, those dogs were in that area. So that's why I believe that it hadn't been long before they'd been let out. Grady was chasing guineas, which was a normal thing to do.
What are guineas?
Guinea fowl is
Sir Little Wolf, she did not get them. She did not.
like it's like a chicken. It's a domestic bird that we had them. They make a lot of racket. It's like I know this sounds silly, but it's like a guard bird. Because anytime, they just make a lot of racket anytime anything unusual is going on. If anything disturbs them, it could be a person, it could be somebody driving up, whatever, they're going to make a lot of racket. So Grady's chasing the guineas. Paul's fooling with Rogan's dog Cash. Maggie's just kind of standing there watching the dogs, which is normal. And they were in that place. As the dogs are out longer, they branch out more. But at that point in time, they were right there. So that told me they hadn't been out a long time. Bubba catches a chicken.
Now, I know we're listening to a lot of filler information, a lot of unnecessary information, but what you need to do is pay attention to how he's talking, his demeanor, the way that he's going about answering these questions, his very particular choice of words. Because once he gets cross-examined, it's such a drastic shift. Yes, Arxinium. This is, in fact, the defendant. This is the defendant.
I'm talking to Maggie for just, a short time before Bubba catches the chicken. I take the chicken, I put it, when Bubba didn't chase, these dogs didn't chase the chickens to kill them. And they didn't normally kill them. They did kill them sometimes, but it was about the chase with those dogs. And they were proud when they caught one. You could just tell by the way Bubba would prance to you when he brought the chicken to you. He was proud that he had caught it, but he wasn't trying to kill it. And so most times the chicken wasn't dead, and that chicken wasn't dead. But a lot of times they would be stunned and they would be just real lethargic. So you had.
Okay, so I have to say this. Sitting here listening to him just go over all of this information about the dogs, I forgot what the initial question was. I'm not gonna lie. I have forgotten what the initial line of questioning was for this answer. And I'm betting that the jury probably felt the same way.
Had to take the chicken and you had to put it up somewhere where, you know, the chicken could be by itself for a minute and it would eventually, usually, you know, come back to normal and go on about its, you know, whatever a chicken does.
Did you get the chicken out of Bubba's mouth?
I did. I took the chicken from Bubba and I put it on top of that.
Now we've seen, you know, this video of Paul with Cash, Rogan's dog. Did you know that was going on? What do you remember about that?
Yeah, I knew Paul was fooling with. When I pulled up on the golf cart, Maggie was standing back, sort of where the driveway would be. It sort of runs out at the.
Okay, Sunshine. So Alex Murdaugh, his wife is Maggie. His oldest son is Buster. His youngest son is Paul, aka Pawpaw, as he keeps calling him. Bubba, and I can't remember the other name because, again, just a flood of unnecessary information, are the dogs. The property that they live on is called, or that the hunting property is on, is called Moselle. The main house is in Hampton, I can't remember its name, and then they have the Edisto property. Yeah. Absolutely ridiculous.
Feed room, storage room's what we call it. It's been called a feed room. But it sort of ran out. Maggie was a little bit further up where she could see back in that angle where the dogs were. Paul was fooling with Rogan's dog back towards the kennel. If I remember when I first got there, Paul was more in the driveway, but then I knew Paul was in the kennel fooling with Cash. Yes, but did I know what he was doing? I didn't know exactly what he was doing, no.
Did you?
I knew.
Oh my god. Was the initial question about fucking Paul and what he was doing? What? Was that the initial question? Paul? Because I swear we just listened to a 10-minute thing about dogs and chickens and guinea fowl. Oh my god. So the relevance of the kennel, Sir Little Wolf, is that is where Paul and Maggie's bodies were found. That is where they were shot. The kennels is like the main thing. Yes, diatribe. Thank you. Oh my god. English words.
He was fooling with his. I knew he was fooling with his tail.
Was Cash in the kennel when you pulled up, you think?
Not when.
Oh! He wanted to know what was happening at the kennel when he pulled up. Okay. Yeah, that makes more sense. Exactly, fit. And the clothes that he was wearing when he initially talked to the cops were not the clothes in that video either.
When I first got there.
Did Bubba or Grady have any collars on?
Yes.
Which, both dogs, one dog, do you remember?
I don't know about Grady, but I know Bubba had on his, what we call a tracking collar. Paul, for his hunting dogs, Paul had a series of tracking collars, and I think there were 5, it might have been 6, but it's a tracking collar that had a device. All the pictures, there's 2.
Sorry, I skipped ahead a little. Like, we don't need to know about the tracking collars. It's unnecessary. I don't want to get confused anymore.
2 exits off of that deck. One of them to the right, one of them straight out that back door. I would have parked to the left. If you're coming down these steps, if these are the steps, it would be to the left and back over there.
Okay, see, that's relevant information. Where did you park when you pulled up to the kennels?
All right,
Which is where I always parked, or where we always parked, anytime you were going in that entrance.
all right, I'm gonna stop there and ask Doug, if you don't mind pulling up State's Exhibit 524, which is the GM OnStar data, and slide 38, which is in evidence. Can you see this the slide with those dots,
Yes, sir.
Alec?
I can.
And the red dots here at the that seem to be joined. Where is that in relation to your parents' house?
Where the arrow is,
Yes, sir.
all right, that's back in the area where I'm talking about. All right, so if you look in this picture, all right, you see you see the open area with the green grass? That's the front door. Okay, yeah, right where that circle is. That's the front door. If you look closely at the house, you can see a big dormer right in the middle of the roof. That's right over the front door. The white thing to the left of the house, that's like a parking pad where the driveway ends. And there's a parking pad, so you go, if you follow the driveway all the way to the house, you're gonna run straight into a carport, all right? By the carport door. Just to the left, before you get to the carport, is this area that you can see here. That's part driveway, mainly parking pad.
All right, I'm gonna, Doug, if you'll pull up Defendant's Exhibit 130, which is in evidence, please, sir.
Yeah.
And from this photo, can you point out roughly where you parked that evening?
All right, this is the entrance to the right that I'm talking about. There's an exit and an entrance right in front of that door that you see there. So if you came down those steps, walk to your left, would be down there would be where I parked.
Oh, would you have parked on the grass?
You get on the edge of the grass back there. There's some grass there for sure, but it's not the area up here by the house where it's sodded and
Sure.
this grass that you can really see in this picture. So it may be on the edge of the grass. Yes, sir.
In relation to the satellite dish, are you looking at this photo, are you to the right of that?
Yeah, you'd be to the right of that satellite dish.
Okay.
Yes.
And
I believe that satellite dish is right on the edge of the, there's a hedge, and like, you see the, I don't know what you call it, a border, like, would usually sit. So I went in, and I
Sorry, I had
sat
to.
down on my mom's hospital bed, and I just talked to her for a minute. My mom was awake, and I held her hand, and
Hold up.
A recliner and a TV. That's where my dad always was. My dad never, it's not the area up here by the house, because my mom and whoever was caring for her was always in her bedroom, which would be just on the other side of the room that has these windows that you see to the right. All right,
Okay, so this piece of property that they are looking at would be his mom's. Okay.
those would be the windows for the room where my dad slept.
Right.
And then my mom's right on the other side. The kitchen's right there. This is the part of the house they were always in.
And are you the only one that would pull up in the back like that?
No.
Is it common for your brothers and your sister to do the same?
Oh, we all did it. I mean, we all parked in the same way. If you knew you were going to the front of the house, or if you knew there was a crowd there, or for whatever, you may park on the driveway, but if you knew under normal circumstances,
Okay, never mind. He's still talking about Moselle. Oh my god, there's unnecessary.
my dad always stayed in the breakfast room where he had a recliner and a TV. That's where my dad always was. My dad never, you would never go catch him sitting in the den up front or in a living room. He just wasn't up there. He was in this room watching TV, or either he was on this back deck. And my mom was either in her room, which was just off of that, or she might be in the kitchen or the breakfast room.
And when you got to the house, who was there? Your mother's house on the night of June 7th.
My mom was there and Shelley Smith was there.
And what did you do when you got there?
The first thing I did was I knocked on the door. The door was locked. I knocked on the door. Shelley didn't hear me.
And then what'd you do next?
I called.
Called what?
I called my mom's.
That right there was an immediate contradiction to the testimony that Shelley gave. He called Shelley and said that he was about to be at the house. He didn't go knock on the door first.
House to let Shelley know I was there. Please come let me in.
Okay. And is that the house phone that's been referred to?
Yes,
Okay. And did she let you in?
sure.
And then what happened next?
I went in and I visited with my mom. I mean, you want me to go into detail on that?
Well, just briefly. Yeah, what'd you do?
I went in the house. In my mom's bedroom, my mom had a bed that was where she slept in normal times. It was like, a bed with, the poles coming out of the corner, a poster bed that coming out of the corners. And she had a bed like that where she slept, but she didn't sleep there anymore. But it was in the room. It was a hospital bed. So when you walked in the room, her bed was to the right. Against the wall to the left was a hospital bed, like a single bed, but a hospital bed, and a TV. And then there was a recliner where whoever was helping her would usually sit. So I went in and I sat down on my mom's hospital bed. And I just talked to her for a minute. My mom was awake, and I held her hand, and
What kind of condition was she in?
her condition was not good.
Another contradiction. His mother was, in fact, not awake. Yeah.
At any time, but given her overall condition, she seemed to be doing pretty well. I mean, she wasn't agitated like I thought she would be, or like I was worried she would be, or like Barbara had described her at that point. So she wasn't agitated, and, you know, I just talked to her. Anytime we talked to my mom, we always tried to be real positive and, you know, upbeat and just, and I just talked to her. You know, I just talked to her, made sure she was okay.
Did you stay seated on the side of her hospital-style bed, or did you move around?
I mean, I stayed there for a few minutes, you know, I stayed there and I talked to her, more than just a few seconds.
Right.
And then, but I didn't stay there. She was, she did look tired. So I got up and I went and I think I sat on my mom's bed for a minute to start with, and then I laid down on my mom's bed, which is, you know, that's what I normally did when I went in there. There wasn't like a lot of chairs to sit in, and I just laid back on the bed.
Now, when you
Talked
talk,
to Shelley and we watched TV.
now, when you're talking about your mom's bed, are you referring to her regular bed?
That's right. Not her hospital bed, not the bed she was in, but her bed, the one I was talking about with like posts.
Right. The,
Now, Sir Little Wolf, this part is actually relevant. So the caretaker Shelley, she has already testified. And when she testified, the sequence of events, the timeline that she gave was, he called her and said that he was about to be at the house. He got to the house. He sat down with his mom and he talked to her for a minute. She was asleep. He came and sat with Shelley, talked to her for a second, watched TV, went back into his mom's room, talked to her for a minute, and then he left. He was there 15, 20 minutes tops. So, now he's saying that he tried to knock on the door first. Then he called Shelley. Then he went inside, laid down, did all of this stuff, and she was awake. So. Well, no, the whole talking to her thing, like, yeah, the descriptors of how they talk to her, definitely unnecessary. But him talking to her, relevant.
let me skip something. Was Maggie planning to go over to your mother's with you that night?
No, she wasn't planning to go with me that night.
Okay.
No,
Was-
in fact, Maggie didn't really like to visit my mom. She loved to visit my dad, and she loved to spend time with my dad. And she spent a lot of time with my mom when my mom was healthy, but, you know, I mean, by this point, my mom, she was a shell. She was a shell of her old self. And I mean, it was kind of sad to go and visit her anytime. I mean, she wasn't healthy. And Maggie didn't like to go and just visit my mom.
When you left Moselle to head to Almeda, the evening after you'd gone back to the house at Moselle, what
Say that again, Jim?
what exit did you use of the Moselle property when you're going to Almeda on the evening of June 7th?
I went out the main gates, which would be straight ahead. You've heard of the two gates. There's the shop entrance. There's actually several entrances, but the main ones we used, there was an entrance by the Dove Field, there was an entrance further down by Sawtooth Oaks, but the main ones we used were the shop entrance and what we call the main entrance, where the brick gates were.
Did you go, why didn't you go by the kennels on your way out?
There wasn't a reason to go by the kennels at that point, and I was going to Almeda, which the main gate would be the gates that were closer.
Did you notify Maggie in some form that you were leaving to go to see your mom?
I tried to call her.
And did she answer?
No.
And what'd you do after that?
I think I tried to call her again.
And did she answer?
No, she didn't answer. And at some point, I texted her after that.
Well, the fact that she didn't answer on 2 times, did that concern you?
At that time,
Right.
it didn't concern me at all. Number one, she was with Paw Paw. So, no, I mean, number two, I mean, it's not unusual to not be able to get somebody all the time when they're at the house or they're it's on the property. I mean, you've heard all the testimony about how spotty cell service was, so no, at the time, it didn't strike me as anything unusual.
Okay. Now, moving back to Almeda, you spent time with your mother, and then you left to head back to Moselle, is that correct?
That's correct.
Did you drive straight back to Moselle?
I did.
Now, Alec, there's some information from the telemetry data off your Suburban and perhaps some of this OnStar GPS data that indicates that at some point in time in your mother's driveway, you stopped for about a minute. Do you recall seeing that data?
I did.
What were you doing when you stopped? Do you
I
recall?
was getting my phone that, my phone had gotten, there's a console in the middle of my car, and my phone had gotten down in the console, between the console and the seat where you couldn't get to it.
Were you, during that minute or however long it was, were you disposing of murder weapons, Alec?
No,
Were you disposing of bloody clothes?
no.
And your ride back to Moselle, was it, were you driving faster than normal?
I was driving however I drive, normal way that I drive.
I would assume that you would drive normally when traveling, normally. I don't like the defense.
When you got back to the Moselle property, how did you enter the property? What entrance did you use?
Came right back through the main gate,
And what'd you do then?
went straight to the house.
And when you got to the house, what'd you do?
I went inside.
Were lights on when you pulled up? Or?
Lights were on in the house for sure. I can't remember if there were floodlights on or not. I don't believe there were any floodlights on, but there were definitely lights. All the lights in the house were on, yes.
And when you, how long did you stay inside the house, roughly?
Now that I've seen the benefit of these records, I was in there several minutes.
Obviously, I mean, were you surprised that Paul and Maggie had not made it back to the house?
You know, I don't know if surprised is the right word, but, I mean, I thought they would have been back by then.
Okay. So, we're about to get to the part where allegedly he found them for the first time. Okay? I'm going to give a trigger warning now that there may be graphic details about the state in which he found them. Allegedly found them. So just keep that in mind.
You know, but, I mean, did it cause me to go into any, it wasn't like I was shocked. But I mean, I thought they would be there. I mean, I distinctly remember, you know, I went and looked. Sometimes I was very hot-natured. Number one, I was hot, I was heavy, and I was taking pills. So I was always hot. Maggie was always cold. Sometimes she would watch TV. We had a TV in the hunting room. You see on the wall there. Sometimes Maggie would be in there watching TV where she could have the thermostat different than we always kept it cold in the main part of the house. So I know I went in there and looked in there for her. It's not unusual for Maggie to be taking a bath and be not able to hear me. So I went back there and I know I did those two things and looked in those two places. And they weren't there. And so, you know, I knew they'd been at the kennels, and I assumed they were still up there.
So what'd you do?
I went to the kennels. I may have tried to call them. In fact, I probably did try to call them. I would think I called them. But as I sit here right now, I'm not positive, but I would think I did. Would think I tried to call them to see.
And now, like, when you in your Suburban?
I did.
What'd you see?
Saw what y'all have seen pictures of. So bad. Can I have some water? Yeah, I went to,
Did you see them on the ground when you're pulling up in your Suburban?
I did.
And what'd you do when you came to a stop, Alec?
I think I jumped out of my car. I'm not exactly sure what I did, but no, I got out of my car. I know I ran back to my car, called 911.
False. This is not what he told them had happened. So, the way that he told it to officers was that he got to the kennels, he saw them, he went back to the house, grabbed a gun, came back, then called them. At first, he didn't check for a pulse, and allegedly later, he did check for a pulse. Mind you, he had no blood or anything on him. Please keep that in mind.
I called 911. I was on the phone with 911, and I was trying to tend to Paul. I was trying to tend to Maggie. And I just went back and forth between them.
Were you going to Paul and Maggie while you were on the phone with the 911 operators?
Yes. Yes.
And in a little bit, I'm going to play the 911 tape, but I just want to ask you, and you've told law enforcement, it's been played here in the court. What did you do when you went up to Paul at some point in time?
And Paul. Paul was he was so bad. At some point, I know I tried to check him for a pulse. I know I tried to turn him over.
When Paul was seen by law enforcement, Paul's phone was sitting on top of his butt. Not in a pocket, on top of him. Had Alex Murdaugh at any point tried to roll Paul over, that phone would have fallen. And again, there was no blood on Alex Murdaugh. Had he tried to check them for a pulse because of the way that they were found, he would have had blood on him somewhere.
When you say you tried to turn him over, why were you trying to turn him over?
I don't know. I don't know why I tried to turn him over. Me and my boys laying face down. And he's done the way he's done. His head was the way his head was. I could see his brain laying on the sidewalk. I didn't know what to do. I mean, I tried to turn him over. I grabbed him by the belt loop and tried to turn him over. And when I did, his phone popped out. His phone popped out. And just picked it up and I put it right back there.
Do you have any idea how it popped out?
I mean, I know it came out of his pocket when I pulled on his belt loop. When I pulled him to turn him over. And it just popped out. And I mean, it popped right beside him. It sat right beside him.
Were you able to turn Paul at all?
I mean, I didn't. I don't know if I was able to. I didn't turn him over, no. No.
What side of the, on what side of Paul were you when you were doing this?
I was on the side that was away from, where my car was.
If you need to step away hearing these details, I understand completely. Take care of your mental health first, okay? Yeah. Just remember that.
Okay.
I mean,
What'd you do with the phone?
I put it back on Pawpaw.
Do you know if you put it, you know which way it was pointing, upside down, downside, anyway?
I couldn't tell you anything about it. I know his phone popped out. I picked it up and I put it back on him.
Did you see any messages on Paul's phone?
No.
I am also very suspicious of how quickly he starts and stops crying and regains his composure when discussing this. Yeah.
Did you go to Maggie?
Did.
Did you touch her?
I did.
Where did you touch Maggie?
I think I touched her down just around like, I don't know. I don't know. If you ask me exactly, I think I touched her down around her waist, but I don't know. It was so bad. Excuse me. I mean, I know I went back and forth. I went back and forth between them. I know. I know I did.
I'd like to play, Doug, the Colleton County portion of the 911 call, which is in evidence as Defendant's Exhibit Number 9. And Doug, this is the long version, the first clip, and
I know that there are fellow neurospices here. If you would prefer that I skip over this part, I absolutely can. Just please let me know. Yeah. All of this is, it's heavy stuff. It's difficult stuff. It's a murder trial. Avi. Yeah, I understand it too, Fit. That's why I'm trying to give people the option. Because it's heavy. Yeah. Let's take a slight breather for a second. So, before we continue on, I just want to remind everyone that if you need any sort of mental health resources, reproductive health resources, LGBTQIA plus resources, there is a link in the description. It's just a giant list. Yeah. I don't know all the things. I'm just good at Google. I don't know. Okay. Let's get into it.
stop it when I say stop it, please?
2021, 22 hours, 7 minutes, 9 seconds.
I'm still here, okay? Communication. Congressman, I have an Alex Murdaugh on the line calling from 4147 Mobile Road. He's advising that his wife and child was shot.
Okay, and sir, give me the address again.
It's 4147 Moselle Road. I've been up to it now. It's bad.
Okay, how did they shoot?
Alan, when you say I've been up to it now and it's bad, what are you referring to?
I'm talking about what I saw was what y'all saw pictures of, and I mean, it was bad, it was terrible. And when I first got there, I know I got out of the car. And I mean, I know I got out of the car, I mean, I knew. Got out of the car, but right at first, I don't think I went all the way to them. I think I ran back and that's when I called 911. And so I called 911, and while I was doing that, then is when I went to Maggie and I went to Paul. And so that's what I think I'm talking about.
Okay. Keep going, please.
Oh, no. Hell no. Do it now. It's bad.
Okay, how did they shoot? Did they shoot themselves?
Oh, no. Hell no.
Okay, and are they breathing?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and you said it's your wife and your son?
My wife and my son.
Are they in a vehicle?
No, ma'am. They're on the ground out at my kennel.
Okay, and did you see anyone?
He shot in the head, and he shot really bad. He shot
Okay, where is he shot at?
Ma'am, I don't know, but there's blood everywhere. I can see his brain. Face down. I tried to turn her a little bit, but she's got a hole in her head.
Okay, is he breathing at all?
No, nobody.
Is he? Okay, do you see anything? Do you see anyone in the area?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No.
Is there any guns near them at all?
No. Here.
What color is your house on the outside?
If that's what you're asking, they didn't shoot themselves, ma'am.
What?
Alec, right in there, you say the word here. What, are you calling anybody or anything?
No, I'm talking to that dispatcher.
And what did you mean when you said here?
If you listen to that call, one of the first things she asked me, one of the first things she asked me was, did they shoot themselves? And I knew there's no way. I mean, I knew they didn't shoot themselves. There wasn't a gun. They didn't shoot themselves. And she'd asked me that. And then she asked me another question, something about that. And you hear me say here, and then you hear the thing talking. I'm telling her here, and then I say something, and then you hear me say, if that's what you're asking. And I'm letting her know they didn't shoot themselves.
Hey, AC. Hey, John. So, okay. That doesn't make sense based on what we just heard. Because the question was, is there a gun? And his response was no, here, and then they cut off the tape. Yeah. Yeah.
Saying here, and then I give her an explanation, which you can't hear on that phone, but it's obvious to me what I'm doing. And I say, if that's what you're asking me.
And once again, I would like to point out the composure change. Listening to the 911 call, he managed tears. We saw them. He is very quickly dry-eyed and speaking clearly. And that makes me uneasy. Really uneasy.
So, like David Owens asked me on August 11th, did I call a dog or was I talking to somebody? There was no dog that was out, and there was nobody there.
Well, let's talk about that briefly. Well, when you got there and you saw Maggie and Paul, where were the dogs?
The dogs were in the kennels. Dogs were in the kennels. They were wherever they were when law enforcement got there.
And you've seen pictures, and they called Dale Davis to the stand and talk about the hose rolled up. Did you roll the hose up?
No.
Did you do anything down there at the kennels when you got there other than call 911 and attend to Maggie and Paul?
No, I do know that I was trying to find a flashlight. I was trying to find a gun. Other than those things, no, I didn't do anything at the kennel. I didn't do anything with any hose. I didn't do anything with any dogs.
Was there anybody with you?
No.
All right, keep going, please.
You can't see it from the road.
Okay, is it a house or a mobile home?
It's a house.
Okay, and what is your name?
My name is Alex Murdaugh.
Okay, did you hear anything, or did you come home and find out?
No, man, I've been gone. I just came back.
Okay, and was anyone else supposed to be at your house?
No, ma'am. Please hurry.
We're getting somebody out there to you.
Oh. There. Oh, should have known.
Alec, we just heard you say, I should have known. What are you referring to?
I said, Paul, I should have known.
What were you referring to?
I was referring to Paul got so many threats. Didn't take serious. Think twice about.
Pay really close attention to this.
I'm just telling him, Paul, I should have known. I don't specifically remember saying that, but I can clearly hear myself say that.
Okay. What kind of threats did you understand Paul was receiving?
I mean, Paul got the most vile threats. I mean, the stuff that was on social media, I mean, it was, I mean, you couldn't believe it. You couldn't believe it. It was so over the top. Truthfully, we didn't think anything about it. I mean, it was just so crazy that, you know, we just, I mean, people talking about what he was going to get and how they were going to do this and get him. And I mean, it's stuff you really, I mean, we disregarded it because it's so over the top. Thought it's so over the top.
Allegedly, in February of 2019, Paul, who there is video footage using his brother's ID to purchase alcohol, drunkenly crashed a boat, which resulted in the death of Mallory Beach. Paul was awaiting trial because of that crash. If you're a lawyer and your child, who is currently awaiting trial, is receiving all sorts of threats in regards to something that he may or may not have done that he is again awaiting trial for, don't you think that it would have been reported to the police, that there would have been a paper trail? Because in a situation like that, they'll probably take the threats really seriously, considering a lot of people are going to be mad at him over the fact that he may or may not have caused the death of someone. This man is a career lawyer. Also, please remember that the story changed after Curtis, who he hired to shoot him in the head, failed a polygraph test. They came out and said, oh, it was Curtis getting revenge, this, that, and the other. Which story is it?
Keep going, please, sir.
Okay, what is her name?
Maggie and Paul.
Maggie is her name?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When's the last time you talked to Maggie?
Hour and a half ago, probably 2 hours ago.
What?
Hour and a half ago, maybe 2 hours ago. The time was just a little after 9:20, and he was on Snapchat video on Paul's phone at 8:44 p.m. with Maggie.
Okay, you said about 2 hours ago you talked to them?
Approximately, yes, ma'am, approximately.
Well, you were asked the last time you saw them, and you said an hour and a half, 2 hours ago, and then she followed up 2 hours ago. You just heard that?
I did hear that. And I said approximately to her question.
When was the last time you saw them, Maggie and Paul?
Right after I took the chicken from Bubba.
And the video we've seen is timestamp 8:44 p.m. Is that correct?
That's right,
So was it shortly after 8:44?
it was.
And
It wasn't long after that, because you can hear when Bubba gets the chicken, and it wasn't long after I took the chicken from him that I left.
and then you called 911. There are records of that, but do you remember roughly 9:07 or right before 9:07?
I mean, I've seen the records and seen the transcripts, yeah.
And then this is,
Hold on. Okay, so he was on video on Paul's Snapchat, 8:44 p.m. He was at Moselle, or not Moselle, he was at Adelaide, his mom's house, right around 9 p.m., 9-ish. He stayed there for like 10-15 minutes. $20 tops. His 911 call was at 9:07. Hey Alex, did you call 911 on your way back to the Moselle property? Because that is what it's sounding like. Because there's no way. There's no possible way. You would have had to drive like a bat out of hell to get back from your mom's place that quickly. The tiny details are super important, such as timestamps.
the records of this, but this is some minutes into the conversation with 911 operators, correct?
That's right. Like,
Knowing everything we know now, I mean, was it roughly an hour and a half the last time you saw him?
it was. That would, with the time of however long it took to get to this point, however many minutes that is 10, however many, you can look exactly and see what point this is and know what time it is, but it's between 10 and 10:15. And so,
If it's between 10 and 10:15, then why did your lawyer say 9:07? Anyway, unless that was just a slip. But it still wouldn't add up. Because you got to your mom's house around 9. And you were there for about 15-20 minutes. Which would put you leaving at 9:20. 25. Give a little leeway. So if you're calling 911 around 10 to 15, what were you doing from the time you left your mom's until you called until he got back to the property. Why was Maggie's phone found off the side of the road? Like the main road, Moselle Road. Way too calculated, way too planned. Especially since he told the housekeeper that I was here for 40 minutes and she knows for a fact you weren't. And this is exactly why the prosecution has not stopped any line of questioning.
So I'd seen him around 8:45, a little bit after.
All right, please keep going.
What they were doing at all?
No, I talked to her in person.
You talked to her in person?
And please hurry.
But we're getting somebody out there too. Me asking you these questions, don't slow them down, okay? And you sure they're not breathing? Is he moving at all, your son? I know you said that she was shot in the head, but what about your son?
Nobody. They're not. Neither one of them's moving.
Oh, and the fact that he told the cops that he went to the kennels first, saw them, went back to the house, went back, then called 911. Because he had to grab a gun first, naturally. Even though he keeps guns in his truck.
What is your telephone number?
942-1227. I'm going back to my house just to get a gun just in case. I'm about
Did you go back to the house and get a gun?
I did.
And is this the gun that you got? And how did you load this gun? What did you load it with, if anything?
That was gun, as best I can remember, I believe I got that gun off the pool table where you heard there was some other gun. I think that gun was laying with that pool table. I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure it was on that pool table. Would have been the first place I came to. I know I was grabbing the first gun I could get. I grabbed a handful of shells out of the, that I could get my hands on. I know the gun had a shell in it, that I loaded, and I know I had a few shells, so.
Have you seen in this case where there was a 16 gauge shell put in that gun?
I've seen in the records and I've seen heard in the testimony that I put a 16 gauge shell in the gun.
Is that a 16 gauge shotgun?
It's not a 16 gauge shotgun. It's a
Why'd you
12
put
gauge.
a 16 gauge shell in it?
I obviously didn't realize what I was doing. I mean, I know you can't put a 16 gauge shell in a 12 gauge gun and not, I mean, I've been hunting my whole life. I know you can't do that. That's not a mistake I would have made. That's not a mistake I'd have made under any circumstances other than that night.
Y'all heard that, right? Y'all heard that. He said that he may not have realized it, but he put a 16 gauge into that 12 gauge. Paul was shot with a 12 gauge waterfowl shot and with a 16 gauge from the same gun. Yes, it is. With hunting rifles like that, it is. But yeah, Paul was shot with a 12 gauge waterfowl shot and a 16 gauge from the same gun. And Alex, coincidentally, put both 12 gauge and 16 gauge in that gun. Tiny details.
Why did you go back to the house to get a gun?
I just didn't know. I didn't know. I mean, you know, saw it. I mean, it's just, I didn't know if somebody was still out there. I don't know. I guess I didn't know.
Please keep going.
And does anything look out of place?
Ma'am, not particularly, really, no, ma'am.
Okay.
Go back to where he said he's going to my house to get a gun, just a few seconds back, 10 seconds maybe.
I know you're upset, Mr. Murdaugh, but I don't want you to get down in the hospital, okay?
Back up some more. Back up some more, please.
My house, just to get a gun, just in case.
What is your telephone number?
942-1227. I'm going back to my house just to get a gun, just in case. I'm about 100 yards from my house.
Alec, you said you're about 100 yards from the house?
That's what I said.
Is it much further than that?
I mean, as you've heard in the testimony, it's 1,100 and something feet, but
Okay.
I said I was 100 yards.
You were wrong about your estimate?
I'm sure I was wrong.
Okay. Keep going.
And does anything look out of place?
Ma'am, not particularly, really, no, ma'am.
Okay. Well, I know you're upset, Mr. Murdaugh, but I don't want you to get a gun and have a gun out whenever my officers get there, okay?
I will not do that. He's been being threatened by, my son had a boat wreck. He's been being threatened for months and months and months. He's been hit several times, and he should finally quit.
Do you know who was threatening your son?
It's too many people. Over the phone. One second.
And you don't know the name of who was threatening him at all?
My son knows. And my son knows.
Your son knows who was threatening him?
I have another son now.
Okay.
All right, I'm going back down there.
All right, roll to the next tape of the same call.
2021, 22 hours, 13 minutes, 58 seconds.
Yeah, they've been around with you ever since you got on the phone with me. I have multiple people coming out there to you. Okay, can you do me a favor, Mr. Murdaugh, and turn on the flashers on your car so that way they can see where the kennels are? Do you have your flashes on for me, Mr. Murdaugh? Okay. I don't want you to touch them at all, okay? I don't know if you've already touched them, but I don't want you to touch them just in case they can get any kind of evidence, okay?
I already touched them trying to get to see if they were breathing.
No, Ally, that second clip starts at 22:13, 10:13, 58, and you're asked, you're told don't touch them. Had you touched them by then?
Yes,
And that way you told the 911 operator.
that is.
And, can you say exactly during that 6-7 minutes when you actually touched them?
I know I touched Maggie. I touched Maggie several times, but, I think, I don't think I touched Pawpaw, but 2 times.
Did you touch one or both of them before you got in the car and drove back to the house?
Yes, yeah,
One or both? Do you know?
both.
All right, keep going, please.
Okay. Well, I just don't want you to move anything just in case they can get any kind of evidence, okay? Okay, and did your son, I know you said that he had been threatened, did your son make reports of this at all?
Yes, ma'am.
He did.
Al, you informed the 911 operator that Paul had made reports of these threats. What are you referring to?
I just know that it had been reported. I don't know that, I don't believe there was any, formal police reports or, that type of thing, but, it had been reported and, it was well known.
In a situation like that, there would be formal police reports. Like, oh my God, you're a lawyer. Get it together.
Okay.
You were a lawyer. You've been disbarred.
So, were you saying he had filed some official report when you said yes?
No, I never thought there was a police report or some formal report like that, no.
Do you know whether or not he made some type of report on campus?
Oh, I know he did.
What do you know?
I mean, I know that there was a time when he was asked to come meet with, God, I can't even remember the gentleman's name now, but I appreciated it so much, and I never thought I'd forget it, but
Is it part of student counseling services?
yeah, he was the dean of students. But anyway, he reached out to Paw Paw and wanted to talk to him. And, I mean, at first we were concerned, you know, why do they want to talk to him? And, I mean, I believe I had Paul come talk to you about that because we were concerned, well, what are they going to talk to him about? But when Paul and Jim got there, it turns out that it was really just they were wanting to make sure he was okay.
So, Mo, you are absolutely right. He is used to informal police reports. But Paul was awaiting trial in the death of someone. So threats against him would be seen as retaliation and would be considered a serious crime. There would need to be formal reports done. There would need to be follow-up. There would need to be a paper trail. So that way, if something happened, they knew who to go to first. Yeah. He didn't take threats, alleged threats, against his son, who had allegedly caused the death of a teenager. Seriously. That makes no sense. At all. At all. At all.
Would, you know, just make sure he was okay. And I know that, you know, they were aware of the threats, or some level of threats, and so, yeah, I mean, it had already been reported to them.
Keep going, Doug.
Where's the proof of them reporting it to the university? Because the university would take that really seriously and they would have a paper trail. Alex Smith was considered accomplished. He was a solicitor. He had the badge. He was sought out whenever people had wrongful death lawsuits, back when people didn't know that he was actually like stealing all their money. He was good at what he did. In fact, he was better than what people thought he was. But he was accomplished. Also, I fucking love Waffle House. I want to get, next time I go, I'm going to get 2 hash browns, scrambled, or scattered, sorry. I'm going to get them scattered, double covered, and chunked. Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
Now, what's your son's name?
Paul,
Paul?
ma'am, I'm gonna call, I need to call some of my family
Okay.
on this.
Well, do me a favor for for me. Whenever you see the officer or the medics, because they're all coming to you, can you put your gun in your vehicle for me?
Absolutely.
Okay. But we have them come in, turn on the flashes on your vehicle so they can see you, okay? You got the flashes on for me?
I did.
Okay. All right. Just whenever you see them, put your gun up for me, okay?
Okay.
How old is your son?
22.
Okay. All right. We're getting them out there to you, okay?
And I will answer you call.
All right.
So Alec, did you call family after you got off the call with the operator?
Yes.
Who'd you call?
I know I called my brother Randy. I know I called my brother John. And I know I tried to call Roro. Well, Roro's not family, but I called Randy and John. And I called Randy and John.
And then you just mentioned Rodo? You mean,
Rogan. We call him Roro. I called him Roro.
why did you try to call Rogan?
I mean, Rogan's house was like, I don't know, as the crow flies, maybe 2.5 miles, 3 miles. I mean, Rogan was like family.
Did you think he was the closest person?
Yeah, I just wanted somebody, to be out there.
Had you seen Rogan's name on Paul's phone in any way that night?
No.
You called, did Rogan answer?
No.
Did you try him multiple times?
Looking at these records, I believe that I did, but I believe some of those are like the FaceTime calls that are to Rogan. I mean, I'm trying to call him, but I don't believe that was me, actually. I didn't FaceTime. I didn't FaceTime people. So I think that's either me trying to call him and hitting FaceTime, or that's me hitting buttons or hitting the phone.
In the State's Exhibit 519, which is the condensed timeline done by Agent Rudofsky, there's an indication, Alec, that at 10:22:09, you opened a group text message from Michael Gunn stating, "She brought the heat for Miami boys." Were you reading text messages from Michael Gunn right after you got off with the 911 operator?
I heard them ask that question. I can promise you, I wasn't reading any text messages.
There's also an entry, Alec, that says at 10:40 p.m. that you did a Google search or a Safari browser search for Whaley's at Edisto while your wife and son are laying dead on the ground. Did you do that?
No. Whaley's is a restaurant at Edisto that we ate at a lot of times. We got takeout from a lot of times, so I'm assuming it was in my search history, pulling up the restaurant, and I obviously was trying to call people or dialing, and I hit that.
Does anyone here own an iPhone? I'm on Android, so. But does anyone here own an iPhone? Okay, so now on Android, when you do something like call 911, okay, when you use the dialer and you dial a number, when the phone hangs up, the dialer is still open on the phone. Is it the same on iPhone? Ah, confirmation. Yep. So he pulled out his phone. He called 911. When he got off the phone with 911, instead of keeping the phone app open and calling the people he needed to call, he read text messages and did a Safari search. Because there's no way, if you're going to call someone when you just got off the phone and the thing is still open, that it would switch to 2 other apps on your phone. Just a thought. Just a thought process. Something to think about.
Wasn't doing any Google searches.
And is one of the persons that you dialed that night a wedding photographer?
It's a guy named Brian White. I saw that on the call log. Brian White's a guy who was in my, contacts, that is a videographer that I've used in cases. I haven't used him in 2 years. And he's a good guy, but we're not personal friends, so I certainly wasn't calling him.
But you called him. It's on the phone record.
So were you, what does that indicate to you, that those actions on your phone? How do you account for that?
Obviously, they're unintentional. I mean, I'm doing something with my phone trying to call people, but I'm not trying to call those people. I'm not doing a Google search for any Whaley's restaurant, and I'm certainly not reading any text.
I want to ask you,
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have you go to the jury room for a break for about 10 minutes. Please do not discuss the case. You'll stay put, Mr. Murdaugh.
Okay. So, we've been at this for about 3 hours. This jury break is an ideal time to call it a night, absorb the information that we have learned, reflect on the fact that this does not line up with anything that he has said to anyone, ever. Ever. So, tomorrow morning I will be on brunch. Y'all can find me there at 10 a.m. EST. Again, all links down in the description. You know, the usual stuff. Oh, of course, you guys. I like going over these things. It's nice to... Oh, I wouldn't say it's nice. It's like a puzzle. Terrible puzzle, but a puzzle. I hope y'all have an excellent night. A wonderful tomorrow during the day. We will probably start it right about the same time. Maybe a little earlier if Small Human goes to bed earlier. Again, Lizard selling pickles. Hit him up if you want some. And yeah. Take your meds. Stay hydrated. Do all the stuff in the themes. Oh, and tomorrow I will have the drive updated with the footage that they have released for the public to be able to have. It will come directly from news sources. And I will have links to all of the sources and all of that inside of the drive tomorrow for y'all. So, good night. Love you guys.